Right, we're live now. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We have Ghanshyam and Sanaullah here from our panel. We discussed Beyond the New Normal. We are here to take your questions. I hope you've been enjoying your day so far. We have Jyoti Chaudhary, who heads our delivery. She's kind of moderated all your questions and curated the questions to keep this session meaningful. Jyoti, over to you.
Good. Thank you, JD. Yeah, so I'll just take you through the questions. So it is said by many that RegTech could be a disruptive element for the financial industry. What are the changes that we are seeing in the sector, and what are the pros and cons to the same?
Is that question on financial services sector, Jyoti? Your voice is a little unclear.
So yes, this seems to be targeted more towards the financial services industry, but I think RegTech is RegTech. Let's try and answer the financial services, but let's also talk about other industries. You want to go first, Sanala?
Yeah, I mean, financial services sector or manufacturing or tech, this current situation is sector neutral, I would say, excepting a few sectors which are more impacted. In terms of the financial services sector, obviously the need and the focus is more on compliance in terms of because you deal in public money. And I think it's one of the first industries which will focus more in terms of the compliance, in terms of the regulatory compliance, as well as in terms of bringing in digitization into the compliance processes. I have seen in my past employment the focus more from the regulators on the financial services sector rather than on other sectors. So it's one of the sectors which will definitely be doing its best in the current scenario to make sure that irrespective of the work from home processes or the cybersecurity risk or the data protection risk or the finance itself or the money itself that they're dealing in on behalf of its customers, it will have to take those additional steps to make sure that they're well protected.
Hi, Siddharth. Welcome to the room. Sorry, Ghanshyam, you go ahead, please. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think something that will be very common to all industries is that there'll be innovations in business models, which would have been a result of what we have seen in the last 6 months. And every innovation in a business model brings along with it its own set of potential risks. That would kind of call upon the compliance professionals to evaluate what the new model is and what kind of risk does that model kind of pose, and therefore how do we retune ourselves and what kind of new compliance measures that we will put in place. These could be the additional challenges for sure one would face.
Right, thank you. So that while you were joining in, we had the first question. The question is, how is RegTech a disruptive element for the financial industry? But we're kind of broadening the question. We're talking about how is RegTech kind of a disruptive element for the businesses? What are the pros and cons to the same? Your views on that?
Sorry, can you say that again?
How is RegTech disrupting the industry, regulation technology?
Well, is it specific to the financial sector or at large?
The question was specific to the financial sector, but I guess we could answer it broadly as well.
But in terms of, I didn't get what Sanala and Ghanshyam said, but in terms of kind of currently there are a lot of regulations that is still kind of evolving. So in terms of kind of disruptions, there are there are kind of it's not ideal, but I see some of these things evolving, given that a lot of it is going to be very heavily digitally focused now with the lockdown and the pandemic coming in, I think uh, with the change in ways of working, I think there'll be a lot of emphasis and there'll be a pressing need for, kind of the regulations to, kind of be more conducive to the, kind of a working environment, which is, kind of digitally driven. Sorry, I don't know if I answered the question, because I think I may have lost the context nonetheless.
No, that's absolutely fine. Hi, Manjari. Good afternoon.
Hi,
Thanks.
good afternoon.
All right, Manjari, we were just wrapping up the first question as to how is RegTech disrupting businesses and industry. Um, Clearly, you cannot kind of listened into the responses here, but your quick take on that.
I lost the question. Could you just repeat the question, please?
How is regulation technology a disruptive element for the industry? What are the pros and cons to the same?
I think we've seen a slew of regulation that has come our way during the pandemic. I mean, starting from government regulations to directives to changes in laws also. It's been such a combination of managing directives and guidelines and a whole slew of new regulations that we've been forced with. Starting from changes to the bankruptcy codes, extending of moratoriums, then people can't go up into winding up. They've stopped that. You have new labor laws that have come in. The whole labor codes that have been introduced as a new concept. Plus, governments in different states have gone ahead and changed their Factories Acts, etc., contract labor acts, in order to suit the requirements of the people there. However, most of them have been for the benefit. Most of them have been rather reactive, in the sense that guidelines have to address the challenge obviously we faced. IBC changes, changes to Factories Act, extending the workers' working hours, extending the, making the threshold limits of getting compliances or licenses for contract laborers. That all of those have been necessitated in order to ensure that there is a little ease of doing business. There's no too much of getting licenses, etc., so that can be business as usual. However, I do feel that it also has had a little bit of a fallout. In the hurry to make sure that it was also about, if a group of corporates lobbied and said that we want something done, so the governments would do some things. And then, recently in Gujarat, we've seen that the Supreme Court has overturned the notification they took out to say that not only can you extend the hours of working for the workers, but earlier the law says that you have to give them double the compensation for extra hours that they work. But they said no, they let them work at the usual numbers. But the Supreme Court has overturned it now. And then all the other states are now in the process of withdrawing that notification back. IBC, it's okay to say that you give moratorium and you don't allow for winding up, etc. at this point in time. There will be many companies that will benefit also from it. But there could be others who were looking to wind up in any case, and probably thought that this would be a good time to do that. Now, those are also, they have been impacted on the negative side. So I personally felt that there has been no sort of one kind of a consistent way in which regulation has kind of impacted everyone. Like the March 29th regulation that you have to pay salaries to all your workers during the pandemic time and nobody is the same. That has been severely challenged. A Disaster Management Act, under which all these new directives and regulations have been brought about, I think was invoked in India for the first time and has no precedent. Everything is going right up to the Supreme Court to get some kind of a jurisprudence around it so that people can find their way around. So, to cut a long story short, I think the regulatory impact has had its benefits in some way, but in other ways, because it has been such a knee-jerk and quick reaction in some ways to manage that, I think it has also raised a few questions.
All right, thank you. That was very insightful. Looking at the next question as well, I think we had an audience full of techies in the room. But here's the question. With the influx of multiple new technologies, what is the assurance on implementation of right compliance technology in place to protect any untoward incident from happening? I'll probably just rephrase it. So while you're bringing in a lot of technology in other areas and other domains, how do you also bring in the right compliance technology that kind of stitches everything together and also prevents any mishaps? Could be data mishaps or process mishaps. Your views on that? Anyone could go first.
Okay.
Go on, Manjari.
Okay, just okay, great, Siddharth. I know you'll add value anyways. So let me try and piece it together with just two thoughts on this. I think I'm glad everyone is understanding that technology is going to be the mainstay going forward. So digitization of processes, use of technology in your everyday working is going to become the new normal. Having said that, and the question is extremely relevant, that how do you choose what is going to be the best way to address that, and what would how to avoid pitfalls? I think you got to go with certain, every company or the other these days, it's like, jumping onto the bandwagon of technology. Now everybody, that's the big commercial sell these days. So everybody and every third party wants to get into it. Choosing the right vendor to be able to provide you with what is important. I think you should also do a little bit of a background check, try and see which are the other companies they have worked with, try and get references, try and get feedbacks. It is, after all, a very important area that you're addressing for your organization, and you've got to be sure. I know budgets are always low for these kind of activities, but sometimes if you go with the right vendor, there may be a certain price to pay, but with that comes a sense of security that, number one, they have the right kind of processes to address your needs of digitization. What kind of data do you want addressed? What kind of litigation processes you want? How do, can they tailor make it for you? And idea, like I mentioned even previously when we had this panel discussion, it's always very easy to put a process in place or put a digitized process in place. To how do you ensure that it really works for what you wanted it set out in the first place? I think that becomes key. And with that, I think there is no foolproof mechanism to get it 100% right. There will always be some glitches, but then if you go with vendors of repute who have built some credibility for themselves in the marketplace, get the right references, do the right diligence, understand what is it that you want. See, your vendor also knows that if you are smart, they are never going to get the better of you. So you need to also understand what is it that you want digitized, what outcomes are you wanting to achieve, and therefore what is it that will that the vendor needs to do for you. Those will become key. And I think you got to understand the pitfalls of data protection. Where can those gaps be? And as legal and compliance professionals, I'm sure you have some understanding, or we all need to get more understanding going forward of this area, so that you know where to spot perhaps where the issues could be. At least you ask the right questions. It will get you, if not totally 100% there, very close to it.
Thank you. Siddharth, you had a point to make?
Yeah, I mean, I was just, taking a cue. I heard Manjari say Stitch, and going from Stitch, I just thought of to the answer to the question is in terms of getting a proper compliance tool in place, and which is, then does everything else for you. I mean, it would be like stitching a garment for an elephant. I mean, by the time you finish, kind of finishing the garment, the other side of the garment would start opening up. In the sense that, it's going to be a hard task, but it's going to be really, because the point that Manjari made about getting the right vendor. Now the point is, the right vendor might be the right one, when you pick the vendor up. And because the vendor, and this is an evolving marketplace in the sense that there are no kind of long history of kind of vendors who have been offering this tool. So the point is, the vendor, given there are limited vendors, those few good vendors might get stressed with the, kind of increase in demand for them and increased number of clients, and, some of the compliance tool, which is otherwise, kind of sound and seems fit for purpose, might present other issues such as cybersecurity issues. Now, the point is, when you're looking at this, we have to, kind of look at it comprehensively. So clearly, I mean, it's not a, I think it'd be important for organizations to, kind of work closely with the vendors once they've chosen them, chosen the vendor, to, identify the right protocols to ensure that, there are no slips in, and the thing is, with kind of larger organizations, they have the wherewithal to, kind of in uh, terms of resources to look at some of these, kind of, especially on things like cybersecurity, where, I have to say we have, kind of a lot of emphasis on cybersecurity. I mean, some of it are lessons learned. I mean, there have been, kind of incidents, we've seen elsewhere, not within our own organization or business, but I mean, I think there are lessons to be learned from what others suffer, and make the best of it. So to make sure that there are right protocols and have that proper engagement with the vendors to ensure that there are no slip-ups. I think that will be the important piece, networking and stitching it all up together.
That, Ghanshyam, you want to go next?
Yeah. So, I've been part of a couple of tech implementations in compliance systems in couple of roles that I've had in my previous organization, as well as my current organization. I want to begin by saying that technology as it stands today is not an auto fix to the problem. So let's all acknowledge that it's not a Tesla that you sit in, switch on, and it can take you through the highway on an auto mode. It doesn't work that way. I've also been in my experience, I've seen the tech solutions failing to deliver what they promise, simply because nobody owned it, nobody drove it, and nobody kind of monitored, reinforced, and kind of drove it as a job, as a day job. So the first point that I want to make is, if somebody's telling you that, hey, listen, you implement this, your compliance is taken care, you can go home, sleep well, answer to that is no, that's not true. Okay. What it does do, and for which I immensely kind of thank technology solutions that have come up over the years, is that, one, it enables compliance. It improves the effectiveness of the training that you do. It helps a very, very effective tracking of compliance. And of course, overall governance and monitoring for at a board level for chief compliance officer or the GC. It helps you to have a larger picture and a control over your overall compliance situation, right? But having said that, what I've realized, in a tough way, in dirtying my hands, is that you need someone to have a day job to drive this. Okay. And you need to institutionalize the compliance system as if it's just part of, the other organization processes, as much as, for example, if how an employee would not dare to violate a purchase policy of the company, right? Which is so core and so essential to the processes that an organization works on. Compliance will have systems will have to be respected in the same way. And the day you achieve that cultural discipline, yes, this system will start yielding you fabulous results, because you will see a less and less human intervention required. You are updated, you stay updated with things that are happening around. You have customized compliance solutions which suit your businesses, that and the specific business model that you have, and the business compliances that you need to design for your business. For example, if you're in pharmaceuticals business, right, you want to make sure that your doctor promotion policies are ethical, right? There are various laws, both domestic as well as international laws bring certain angles where your expectation from you when you do this business is ethical promotion to doctors. So you have to have those business policies implemented in your organization, and automation of those policies is, trust me when I tell you, it's a blessing. It is a blessing, but it's not an auto solution. It's not a solution you take your hands off and then say, hey, will this land me in a crash, or will this keep going smoothly? There's no answer to that.
Thank you. Sanala?
Yeah, I think the panel has spoken enough about this, but I would like to just quickly add to what they have been saying. I think it's very important that the team using the tool is actually bought into it and is happy about that tool, and they don't think that that technology or tool has actually increased their work. Then it will be very difficult for us to kind of get the buy-in of the team. I think what's important is that whether it's reduced that human intervention and whether it has actually helped the team. But I think that level of automation has not yet come. There are very few products. There's a lot of scope there to improve. You will have to constantly, ultimately it's only a solution. Again, the team has to key in the data. The team has to make sure that it is feeding the relevant information, getting the reports out and analyzing the reports and taking a final decision as to whether there is a non-compliance. I think there is a lot of human intervention that still requires into these solutions that we have today. There's still a lot of scope for automation and digitization in these solutions. Again, it's not like one size fits all kind of a thing. You will have to figure out what suits your feet, whether it's a Nike or an Adidas. It depends on your foot size, etc., and what you are comfortable in. So that's how it works.
Thank you so much. I can't help but mention that between the four of you, we've got like a silver capsule on how to go about choosing your right compliance partner, rolling it out, getting the right techs in place, how technology is also to be balanced with content. I mean, this is a very, very powerful capsule. Thank you so much. I think we have the last question in the room, and this one is a little tricky. If you bring in this compliance tech and you bring everything together in in a centralized database and so on, will it help the regulators to resolve some of the challenges and the hurdles that they face? Sanal, I know you work very closely with SEBI. You kind of are on some of these panels. I'm sure your peers are too. But why don't we start with you first on your response to this question?
So out of all the regulators, SEBI, in fact, I'm very surprised and very happy that, it's one of the fastest and the quickest to adapt the technology. And so if you walk into any senior person's office in SEBI, actually, his telephone is a video phone, in the sense that he can actually see the person who's sitting on the other side of the desk. And if the call comes from any of the SEBI offices, it's actually a video call. It's not there even in Wipro, and it was not there in ICICI in those days when I was with ICICI. So the technology adoption by SEBI is one of the fastest. Even the surveillance mechanisms they have to track the insider trading regulations in particular is brilliant and one of the best. And the kind of orders they are passing, the kind of evidence they are collecting to pass an order, it's fantastic actually to see that a regulator is at such an advanced stage of technology implementation. I think what needs to be probably further to be done is that how do they integrate it with the host of information that is there available today on the net, in the sense that if unless somebody complains, if they have to start probing that incident and start getting into depth, that's when they're getting the information today. Instead of that, can there be an automated sort of a solution if there is a violation that happens by a listed entity? It automatically kind of pops up onto the regulator's desk and something like that. I think that's the next stage of evolution that's going to happen. But otherwise, SEBI as a regulator is brilliant. MCA, again, we have seen a lot of changes in terms of, gone are the days when we actually used to go to the registrar of companies and, file our applications, and then follow up after 15 days. Even to get a name availability certificate, it used to take 1 month to get the name available, and then the registration or the incorporation of the company, etc. Today, we sitting in our offices, we file all the forms, and they get auto approved most of these forms. So I think there's a lot of things that has happened in the regulatory space, both in SEBI as well as from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs.
Thank you. Kansham, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I think making more contextual for and being very specific to answering to the question, DOJ, SEC, and Closer Home Competition Commission of India, all of them have kind of come out to say that they would be mindful, and they would take into account in the event of a violation what kind of systems and processes that the organization had for preventing the offenses that are in question, right? So it's something which is now very well understood, that if you have robust compliance systems, and those compliance systems were designed to address the day-to-day challenges, and they facilitated compliance and so on and so forth, and you have done all of that, and you ran a good compliance system. And some of these websites also offer what a good compliance system should look like, and what is that it should provide for, and what features it should have. If we have those systems in place, regulators have respected that and taken that into account while determining the extent of penalties, or in the extent of appreciating the steps taken, and the the robustness of the compliance system have been rewarded. So I would think FCPA, antitrust, some of these topics of compliance. Yes, we should go ahead and have robust systems of training, compliance, documentation, in order to make sure that we obviously prevent a compliance breach. And even if the compliance breach were to happen for some reason, even the regulators can appreciate the intent behind your compliance system, and they have always been appreciative of it.
True that. Thank you. Siddharth, and then we wrap it with Manjari.
Yeah, Jaideep. So I'll just build on what Sanala and Ghanshyam have said, and starting with Ghanshyam, I think about the question being whether the regulator would rely on the kind of compliance mechanisms or tools that are in terms of technology to kind of assess compliance. I think at least in India, it's fast catching up, certainly, but in the West, if you're looking at it from our global organization perspective, a lot of the trainings and all of that are done in terms of say the anti-bribery and kind of ethics and compliance trainings that we kind of undertake for all employees. Like Manjari was saying, that every employee has to undergo that training, and essentially, and it's also tracked very kind of rigorously, and people who do not kind of undergo the mandatory trainings will be docked during their performance evaluation. So that's how kind of strict it is in terms of compliance. And some of these, and this is essentially kind of it is important. I mean, compliance and ethics and compliance is good business to begin with, but the point is having all of this trainings and records of the training is essentially what one would call adequate measures in the context of FCPA and the UK Bribery Act. So that's one part of it. And going with what Sanala said, he did allude to insider trading. Now the SEBI, the insider trading regulations have been now really tightened up, and in terms of tracking, I mean, all of corporates are required to kind of get into a tracking where you're required to have a compliance. I mean, a tool which tracks any trades done by insiders designated persons or those having, kind of UPSI, which is unpublished price sensitive information. Now, that kind of tracking now, I mean, the more regularized that those, kind of implementation of those tools get amongst corporates, I think it will make it much more easier for SEBI to just track those, that technology and tools which have been, kind of implemented in the various organizations to check whether or not there have been insider trading. And even for companies like ours, it's that's essentially what we rely on and to check on things. And it's more efficient than ever before than having to go and physically check these things. So yeah, I think it will become a kind of kind of a normal practice for regulators to rely on technology for tracking compliance.
Thank you. Manjari, your views, please.
I'll resonate with what all my co-panelists have said. I think the regulators, while we are also sort of enhancing our technology and use of technology and making our processes more automated, and most of the filings now have turned into an automated process. So obviously, there are two elements to it, to my mind, that the companies who have to make all these filings, or you are going to be interacting with regulators in different ways. I think you got to, on one hand, make sure that your processes and the data that is there is captured in the right way. The what has to be sent out to the regulator is done in the right manner, so that once or twice if that goes wrong, the credibility of your organization actually gets impacted. That's very important. The second aspect of it is that, do these regulators have sufficient tools have they upgraded themselves to that level? See, I deal with basically, of course, the filings and all, etc., that happens with the Companies Act, and the companies, the CS does those. But we deal with SEBI, we deal with the CCI, which is Competition Commission of India, and we also deal with IRDA, which is the insurance regulator. And of course, now we will be dealing now under the new Consumer Protection Authority. We'll have another regulator coming up there. But in all of these three, I have found that they are pretty savvy with the technology and their systems. They are rather receptive to understanding all of this. So there is not, you don't witness that lag that, okay, as companies, we've reached a certain stage, whereas the regulator whom we have to deal with in order to make sure our compliances are accepted are far behind. And therefore that gap, should we do this physically or should we now do it in an automated way? So I think government is understanding, and I think under the present regime, I think there is a lot of push on digitization. There's a lot of push on automation. Bigger regulators have started looking at it. I think I've sometimes even observed it in some smaller, district level officers and others. It also depends a lot on the push that the government gives to it, and also the individual officers who are manning those roles. Sometimes if it's the younger breed, they tend to be a little more conscious of the fact that we need to do things on an automated basis. But I'm hopeful. I already see the change, and I'm hopeful that as we go along, when this becomes a mainstay, there will be a lot of change, and the change for the better.
Thank you, Manjari. I think those are the questions we had from the audience. If I were to summarize the responses to the Q&A, trust your technology, but content is king. Collaborate with your partners. One size doesn't fit all. You need to take an individualistic view of your program and continue to work with both your organization, the regulators, and your compliance partner. It's been such a fantastic afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us and responding to the questions from the audience. I hope you stay back and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you so much, Manjari, Siddharth, Ghanshyam, and Sanaula. It was a fantastic session.
Thank you so much, Jerry, for having us over. It was a great session.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jaideep.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Manjari. Thanks, Siddharth. Bye, Sanaula.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.